With the newest Valorant season already well on its way, we have seen a number of surprising and shocking moments and matches that no one expected when predicting this year. But one of the biggest and least talked about discoveries has been on a map that has a long-standing meta that has now been completely upended by an unlikely duo.
Let's talk.
Deadlock and Vice, who just a second ago were viewed as unplayable in the bro scene, have completely dominated Bind in the kickoff tournaments, with the agent comp winning 8 out of the first 10 times it had been played so far. An insane win rate for a comp no one was thinking about before. So I'm going to go through and analyze what makes this duo so powerful, and look at how this partnership will be defining the meta going forward this year. But quickly, can you make sure you're subscribed, as I want to see if we can get past 15,000 subscribers before Masters Bangkok. And I really believe we can do this, as I got some big videos coming out, so you don't want to miss out. So let's get into it. Prior to this season, Deadlock, since her release back in 2023, has been viewed as a dead agent, seeing next to no use outside of like the insane comps Chinese teams would cook up, and maybe EG sometimes when Potter was feeling like she had a specific anti-strat. But overall, Deadlock didn't have anything that made her more useful than other Sentinels, especially with agents like Cypher and KJ, who had more reliable util for sites. Since the nerfing of Sage and the exit of Icebox, barrier util just wasn't as useful as zoning utility or info trips, leading Deadlock to see a 5% pick rate at champions. So going into the season, there was no thought of Deadlock until the newest Sentinel over a year after Deadlock's arrival was released. Vice instantly reignited people's interest in the barrier util, as her wall was unbreakable and combined the trip mechanic, making her so powerful in the defense. While it was pretty obvious that she was a viable Sentinel, especially with KJ having a hard counter thanks to the introduction of Teho, people didn't know where she would be slotted in on different maps. As while she was a great site anchor, she didn't seem like a sole Sentinel, especially since she's so duel heavy. So when looking at what maps she'd be played in for this coming season, one map especially looked like a fit. Bind, which has always had trouble figuring out what Sentinel to use, was one of the main focuses for teams, as Cypher had been the main pick prior, if even a team had a Sentinel in their comp. Because Cypher had a problem with so many wide areas on sites, and Fade being able to break trips with her Prowler, making Cypher not the perfect pick, but the best available. Now with Vice, she was way better to slot in as she had a nice flash that allowed her to take duels in these open sites on both attack and defense, while also being able to slow down any pushes thanks to her wall, allowing teams to have enough time to either take the fight right away or regroup enough for a fast retake. And adding her in the pre-existing comp over the offseason seemed like a good fit, as her win rate was rising in all regions during these tournaments. But the region that most took to this new agent was China, who'd make her the meta right away. Thanks to their intense interest on her abilities, China came up with a groundbreaking duo that has almost guaranteed any team that uses it a map win. Teams like Nova, Trace, and Dragon Ranger thought to themselves, what is better than one Sentinel who can completely stop attacks and break up rotations? 2 Sentinels who can do that. These teams brought in Deadlock to change the meta comp from no Sentinels to 2 underutilized Sentinels that every other region was ignoring. And while in the offseason there were some holes and util issues, once the kickoff tournament started, everyone was exposed to just how powerful this comp is, as during the second day of the tournament, we saw both Chinese matches pull out the comp, as both Dragon Ranger and Nova won with it in a combined 26-10 round differential, with their defensive sides being the impressive part, as Nova went 10-2 on defense, while DRG went 8-4, with a few of those rounds being lost due to hero plays by JDG. But while some might view it as a fluke, the most dominant team at the start of kickoff, Trace, used this comp to pull off the biggest upset against EGG. With many people speculating that this might be the first time EDG was no longer the best team in the region, with them not winning from unbelievable pop-off moments, but rather drowning Kang and the rest of EDG, with util forcing them into a slower tempo. This comp in China won the first 5 times it was played, with teams going a combined 65 and 29. Completely unheard of in how obvious an upgrade this comp is to the previous meta, with it truly being a central reason teams like Trace and Dragon Ranger did so good against top competition, and also why teams like FPX and Bilibili just didn't look as promising as the year before. But all this talk about the games it won, I feel like we need to actually dive into what makes this duo so unbreakable. Let's dive into 2 rounds, one from both the attack and the defense, to understand what makes this double Sentinel comp so difficult to play against when you aren't ready for it. We're going to dive into an attacking rifle round between Dragon Ranger and JDG, as if you didn't watch this matchup, JDG at times looked like the better team, especially as Stu was going off on Duelist, but this comp on the attack worked as the perfect counter to an aggressive defense. Let's get into round 18, where Stu's fast-paced Neon has been causing havoc whenever they try to attack the site he's on. So early on, they decided to attack B, as they don't have any presence towards A, which against this comp by JDG is a good idea, as with Deadlock and Cypher util on A, it wouldn't do too much good as nothing really would get the 3 on B to rotate, as Brim and Deadlock are set for a retake if they get overwhelmed. On B, they're planning on taking the fight head on, and DRG knows this, so they decide to fake an initial attack without retreating at all. This causes JDG to use up a good amount of their stalling util without any actual effect. All while DRG's Deadlock is rotating through hookah, as Spirit has the most important job when the site hit happens. First off, he gives his team one less angle to worry about as they entry onto site, and also with the Deadlock's barrier and grab nets, he can throw it here or onto site and cut off the defenders on site from leaving, as well as slowing down rotations. They pick up the orb to give them the Brim ult, which kicks off this whole site attack.
田忌光束拍不拍？
拍 elbow 还是拍包点后？
直接定位。
Stu still goes crazy and picks up a few, but since he's so caught off from the rest of his team, they aren't able to trade off of him, especially as Tiberius Luke is set up perfectly by Nick's KO flash, leaving only Sky left who gets isolated, giving them the player advantage. Then, like I said, Deadlock throws her wall right here before the rotation can come in and try to disrupt their plan, giving them just enough time as JDG has to break the barrier to set up in off angles and win the round to push it to map point. It's clear that this comp is weaker than the previous meta when attacking a site, as they just can't prod around the map as much. But when you get the other team to waste util early, the flashes, along with an explosive execute, can win them the site, and once the defense is pushed back, it's so hard to win with all this util that's just designed to slow down any push as the spike ticks down. Now let's get into the half that really makes this duo so hard to defeat, as on the defense, they won 63% of the rounds when the comps weren't mirrored. So let's see why as we dive into a rifle round between EEG and Trace in the upper semifinals. We can really look at any defensive round from this comp because it really is all about how they set it up. In round 7, Trace are set up with Vice and Fade on A, while Deadlock is holding down B with Raze and Brim. This all makes a lot of sense when you think of the combos you want, as Raze with Deadlock can set up for nade Gravwell combos in these tight spots, while Fade and Vice have util that can completely stop pushes, allowing them to either take the fight together or both decide to fall back. Also with Vice on this side, she can still have her flash ready on the retake if she has to abandon. EDG, with a kind of broken buy, decides to put pressure on both sides to see if they can find any way through, as they had now lost 2 of these rounds in a row now, and they want to slow down the snowball before the half gets out of hand. After feeling pressure on B, EDG decides that A is the better site to hit, as they push up mid. Right as they're getting ready to start their attack, they're completely locked out, as they have to wait for first the thorns to disperse, then they have to wait for the tether, and by then, all of Trace have rotated to A and are ready to take the fight. They didn't even have to worry about the flank or fake on B due to the barrier Deadlock through or the trip in hookah, which would just allow them enough time to rotate again and be ready for a quick post plan. This is so insanely hard to counter, as even with all of that, they still have yet to get past Vi's wall. Because of this, they're forced yet again to rotate through the teleporter to B with 30 seconds left. Since they don't have space, they have to re-clear everything, giving Trace yet again more time to rotate. So now you're starting to understand the struggles when fighting this comp. EG wouldn't be able to even plant a spike, as Trace would just hit an insane shot to put the round away.
做2楼和 B 打的夹击，这个怎么
爆能器落在 B 很难打呀，他面对技能很多 ，Loki 打掉了 Simon。
上了组，但是他们发现没法突破，没有办法打成协同，所以被迫用传送器转到了 B 区，而手里也再也没有更多的技能了。
其实转到 B 区，
This issue would happen to every team that would try and take down this defense, as there's just too many ways for this comp to slow down or lock off different parts of the map, allowing defenders the ability to have space without even actively fighting over it. And this would be why this comp was just turning the region upside down. But China hasn't been the only one using this combo, as an unlikely roster in IGL has put it into play in Europe, as Sadok and Aang have together also seen the promise of this comp and used it to their advantage when no other team in their region has yet, at the time of writing this, done so. And I actually blame this comp for the reason why KC was being so hyped up, and then ended up struggling against lesser teams, as through their 3 matches against Na'Vi, Team Vitality, and Giant X, they won 4 maps, with 3 of them being on Bind. And when watching how well they play on Bind compared to any other map, it's night and day, as even when they have team cohesion issues, the unique comp was too hard for other teams not ready for it to overcome, even when the other team was better.
Sheriff's here, so you're looking at a very uphill battle, and Sadok gonna remind them of that. And it is a blender, Martin! He's having fun with it.
We did see though, as teams could prepare for it more, they had more issues, yet they still would win. Outside of KC, the only other teams regularly using it have been non-Shim Red Force, which led to one of the 2 times so far that this comp was antied, as both Boom and EEG, who defeated Trace in the grand finals, are the only teams that have yet to go up against this comp without mirroring it and coming out with a victory. But both maps were still close, so let's look at it. So we'll first start with the adjustments that EEG went through to turn that 13-4 loss to 13-11 victory. Their big change was dropping Sky and Viper, which was old meta picks, and swap them for the Vice, which I think is a must pick now, as well as using Simon on KO. This switch from a double smokes comp to a Sentinel in the place of the second smoke shows the evolution that this map is going through right now. Because since it's so hard to defend sites, the smokes and extra info was necessary to both be able to slow down attacks early, as well as getting info on positioning before a site attack. These are things that Vice not only fixes but does way better now, as you don't need the extra smoke as long as your Brim stays alive, and you no longer need Viper because Taeho does a better job delaying a defuse. So right when they changed to this Vice comp, they were able to actually compete against Trace, but even then it was close, as the Deadlock Vice combo is still better than the Soul Vice, which we see as Trace goes on a fast run at the start, winning the first 6 rounds before EDG makes the right adjustment, which is pretty much just be explosive early onto sites with King and hope he gets the first kill or provides enough time for the rest of his team to fight through all the Deadlock Vice util. They were able to get just enough wins on the attack to be able to rely on King and Nobody to win them enough defensive rounds to barely scrape out that victory. The more comfortable win against this comp happened in Pacific, with the first and at the time of writing only use of it is Nongshim playing against Boom, where Boom actually blew out the Deadlock Vice duo, winning 7 of their 8 attacking rounds, with a similar comp as EDG in the grand finals, but instead of Taeho, they went with the older meta of Fade. When looking into this match, I thought I'd find some golden reason and flaw in the comp that all of China and KC's opponents didn't see. But when diving into the side where Nongshim failed, where everyone else before them succeeded, it seemed like it wasn't really the fault of the comp actually. It was more because of Berserks on Vice went insane on the attack, going 10-1, even when his team would go down to a 4v5 disadvantage in over half of their attacking rounds. As the comp was working as it was supposed to, allowing them the advantage most of the time, but then each round, Berserks or DOS9 would get a pivotal 2k, taking out important util for the post plant, leading to Boom shocking this comp and winning.
Time is dwindling, but so too are the players. Nongshim, they all fall to the wayside. A flawless round to close it out. Boom, take us the distance.
The only clear tactical changes that helped for this team was how much they prodded with Famous on Raze, and used flashes to isolate duels as they had to swing much more aggressively. While there are ways to win against this comp, there hasn't yet been a clear anti-strat that has worked reliably, so it's hard for teams to actually win without mirroring this comp themselves, as even a Soul Vice, which is what EEG and Boom did, don't look like the long-term solution. So going into Masters Bangkok, barring any major patches, this Deadlock and Vice duo will be the meta on Bind, and any team that doesn't at least have a clear idea how they're going to deal with these Sentinels will automatically go down a map, as no team has been able right away to defeat this duo without prep time and footage. So expect to see this a lot in this coming Masters, as it is truly powerful even if the Americas and Pacific are being slow at adopting it. Want to know what happened to some of Valorant's earliest superstars? Click this video about the biggest fall-offs in pro Valorant history, or you can click on the mystery random video YouTube wants you to watch. Either way, make sure you're subscribed.